And just so you know, for the sake of background noise and things like that, I just muted all of the participants, and I'll unmute if that's okay. Or if you want to just mute it yourselves, you can mute your phones, and that'll just make for a better webinar experience. So I'm going to try to unmute it for now, and we'll see how
the conference has been unmuted.
All right. So thank you very much. Anyway, Shift F1 and it gets you to the particular topic immediately without having to figure out what the particular search term is.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay, great. So just to show Shift F1, I can't see my keyboard. You can't see my keyboard, but if I want to find out about convert to image, let's go ahead and click on convert to image. Or if I want to find out about effects or fillet corner, what is fillet corner? Holy cow! Shift F1, Tools, Fillet Corner. I guess it has to be highlighted, but that's okay. Anyway, Shift F1 is my favorite way to go ahead and find information. And also on your Omega 6 DVD, Omega 5, Omega 4, whatever version you have, we have all kinds of information on the DVD as well, including presentations, videos, PDF files, and even our full learning guide and our full manual are also on the DVD. So that's right at your fingertips as well. Okay. So anyway, I have lots and lots of topics here in PowerPoint, and I will send you a copy of this PowerPoint. But what I'm going to do is, of course, switch over to Composer, and I think that's just a much better way to sort of show the presentation, and I wouldn't be going through 628 slides. So I'm going to go ahead and start over here. And again, if anybody has any questions, I see we have Kathleen and we have Doug as well. Do you guys have any particular topics you'd like me to cover in during this presentation?
I'm good.
You're good, okay. All right, then I will get going. I'll start at the beginning and work my way to the end. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is this concept that we call reaction in Composer. And we added reaction in Omega 3.0, and really what it is just a more sophisticated version of what we used to call smart edits. So, but what it does, it allows you to really design and try different what-if scenarios much more quickly and effectively just by really going through your normal design process. So let me go down here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to my text on the work surface tool, and I'll go ahead and enter in some text. I'll call it, my favorite season, summer. There we go. And so now I just have text, and if I double click on it, because all I have is text, it brings up my text entry dialog box. But if I go ahead, and I'll go ahead and give this a color as well. I'll make this base to be green. Now if I go into my Tools menu, and then I go into Outline, I can now add an outline to this. And one of the tips and the tricks, I don't know if anybody actually attended the Omega 6 webinar, but we have a new capability called the Apply button. So if I click on the Apply button instead of clicking OK, you notice that the dialog box pops back up, and I can actually see the results of my outline. And if I want to do some adjusting, I can go ahead and adjust it, and it's a lot faster and a lot easier to sort of see the results in the context. So that's something that we added in Omega 6, this new Apply button. But I'm talking about reaction. So now I have my text, I have my outline, and now if I select my outline and I go into the Tools menu again, and I go into Shadow, I can now add a drop shadow. And then once again, I can try my Apply button and see if I like the value for my drop shadow, and if I don't, I can change it to be 0.4 and then click on Apply again. So it's a better way to be able to see the results right here on the screen and to try, again, different what-if scenarios. So now that I have my text, my outline, and my shadow, and I want to go ahead and I want to change something, back in the olden days before Omega 3.0, if I double clicked on it, it would just give me just the dialog box for the most recent thing that I added. So it would just show me the drop shadow dialog box. So if I wanted to change my text or my outline, I would have to turn everything off and then turn it back on again in sequential order, or just delete it and start over again fresh. But now with reaction, you have the ability, when you double click on a series of operations, such as what we just created, you can double click on any of the operations, and then you can go ahead and change any of them. So if I don't want this to be summer in lowercase, I want it to be uppercase, I can type it correctly. Of course, we do have a spell checker too. I can go ahead and I can now change summer, and it ripples through and it changes my outline automatically, it changes my shadow automatically, and it's all nice and fast and automatic. So the other thing too is that if I change my colors, so I have my base text to be green, I want my outline to be maybe a darker green, and then I want my shadow to be black. I can go ahead and make those changes as well. Well, that's not all that attractive. Maybe I'll make the base text to be yellow. Go into my fill bucket, change my color to be yellow. There we go. Oh, wow, that looks summery. Reminds me of Brazil from the Olympics. Now when I go ahead and I double click on this with my regular pointer, P for pointer, and then I can change it to say winter if I want it to say winter. And you're going to notice also that my colors are retained and all of those effects are retained as well. And it's all nice and quick, nice and automatic. And some people, they really like reaction and they embrace it very quickly. Other people, they're kind of used to designing in the pre-Omega 3.0 world where they kind of don't like where things are regenerating and popping back. You do have some options with reaction as well to sort of change the way that the reactions automatically regenerate on your screen. So if you want to change that, you can go to the Tools menu and then Options, and then right here on this first tab, down toward the bottom, it says Reaction. And when doing graphical edits, I kind of have it set in the middle right now. I have it Do Not Automatically Regenerate. So by default, it uses full reaction. So as I move things around on the screen, my outlines are regenerating, my shadows are regenerating. You can have it not do that automatically by dropping it down and telling it to not automatically regenerate, or you can even be the most conservative. You can use pre-reaction graphical edits, which means that it's going to basically behave like Omega 2.5 or earlier. It's not going to automatically regenerate reaction stuff on the screen. So you do have some control over that, so that's kind of one of the tips and tricks that I'm trying to relay here.
Dale, this is Bill, and I use reaction all the time. It's absolutely fantastic.
Okay, very good, excellent. And you know, there are a lot of things about reaction that people don't actually know about. Let me go back to Tools, Options, and I'm going to tell it to automatically use full reaction. And it's kind of neat because I can scale just my text, and when I scale just my text, you'll notice that it's maintaining my outline at the original outline value because I'm just scaling the text. So there are a lot of subtleties about reaction as well that you can take advantage when you do use the full reaction. So you notice that when I scale just the text, the outline is maintaining its original 0.15 value. Let me just double click on that. There we go. But if I select the whole reaction tree and then I scale it, it's keeping everything proportional to each other. So now you're going to notice that my outline is actually going to be a different value because I scaled the whole reaction tree. You notice it's 0.198 instead of 0.15. So there are a lot of nice subtleties to reaction, and you can find out about all these by going to What's New in Omega 3, and that link will be in the PowerPoint that I send you as a follow-up. So just again, reaction is a nice addition, a great time saver. It allows you to set up templates and things like that. So, you know, if you like this effect up here that I have, summer, but I want to use a different font or different text or what have you, you can just do it very nicely and quickly. And let's do autumn since we're coming up on the autumnal equinox. There you go. All right. So that's a little bit about reaction. Any questions about reaction or turning it on, turning it off, tweaking it, anything like that? All right. There it is. And if you think of things along the way, again, feel free to chime in. I did unmute you because you're behaving very well. All right. The next thing is just something relatively easy to digest is the Control and the Alt keys in Composer. We've really added a lot of functionality with the Control and the Alt keys right here in the Composer work surface. So I just want to make sure that we review all the different things that you can do by using the Control and Alt keys in Composer. And by the way, I will send you this PLT file as well. I'll zip it up so it's not too large, or maybe I'll create it as a link. So the first thing is that you can break groups and combines when you're designing on the Composer work surface. So right now I'm in my regular pointer, and I grouped this little graphic over here that says Group and Combine. But what if I just want to select the word group, but I don't want to have to go through all the trouble of ungrouping it, which isn't really that much trouble. But there's a nice, quick, easy way that you can do that. All you have to do is hold down the Control key when you select an element of a group or a combine, and you notice that it's now allowing me to just select that one line of text. And each line of text is automatically grouped by itself. So that's just a nice, quick, easy way to go ahead and temporarily break a group or a combine, is to hold down the Control key when you select it. So now I'll click. Again, you notice that I have it all grouped. I click on it. I hold down the Control key when I click on it, and I can now go ahead and just select that individual element. Just as an FYI, text, when it's generated in Composer, it's automatically grouped on a line-by-line basis, and it's automatically combined on a line-by-line basis. So even with this decorative border that I have created up here, I can even just select one component of the decorative border by holding down the Control key as well. So, all right, so that's a little bit about temporarily breaking your groups and your combines. If I was in the color pointer, and by the way, you notice that my color pointer is now green in Omega 6, just to give you a little more denotation. So there's a regular pointer, P for pointer, Shift P for the color pointer. And I've also combined these guys so they knock each other out. And if I hold down the Control key, you notice that it broke my combine down to the individual letter element. So group and combine, hold down the Control key. Another thing you can do with a combine key, so let's say I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to hold down, back to my regular pointer, hold down the Control key, and I have this word group selected. If I hold the Control key while I'm actually moving this, it will make a copy of whatever I'm moving. Or if I hold the Control key while I size it, it makes a copy, a new resized copy. So basically it leaves your original there and it makes a new version at the new location or at the new size, et cetera, et cetera. So if I'm slanting, whatever it is graphically, if I'm slanting and hold down the Control key, it leaves an original there. If I'm rotating and I hold down the Control key, it leaves the original there and gives me a new copy. So just by holding down the Control key, you can also do a lot in terms of adding to your design with duplicates or with new elements that are identical to other elements. So hold down the Control key again. All right, next I have what I call handle move. So with the Alt key, we've added there's some old functionality, and we've added some new functionality as well. So I'll select this entire piece here. And typically to move an element in Compose, you want to click right on a vector and click and drag, and that allows you to move it. If you click in a blank area, of course, it'll cancel select. So I'm not able to move it by clicking the blank area. But sometimes you might want a little bit of precision when you're moving something. So as opposed to clicking on a vector, you might want to move it specifically by handle. And we have a sort of a hidden handle move mode. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. By the way, one of my favorite accelerator keys is Shift Z. If you do Shift Z, it will zoom to whatever is selected. So if I have this line of text selected, Shift Z, it'll zoom me as much as it can to that particular line. If I have group combine selected, Shift Z, it just zooms me to my group combine. So anyway, sometimes you might want a little more precision, and you can do that. You can do a handle move by holding down the Alt key, and you notice that my cursor changes to a little crosshair or a plus sign. And now when I click on my handle, it allows me to move it, and say I want to snap that handle to that particular guideline. It's very quick and easy. Or if I want to, sometimes if you have text or whatever, you have your baseline handles, you can snap your baseline to a guideline as opposed to snapping the bottom of the text to the guideline. So hold down the Alt key, fly over one of your selection handles, and it allows you to do a handle move as opposed to clicking and dragging on one of the vectors. Okay? So that's kind of neat, but we've also added additional functionality now to the Alt key as well. So if you hold down the Alt key and fly over a handle, it's going to give you that handle move that we just discussed. If you hold down the Alt key once you're in the midst of your move in Omega 6, we've added new the ability to constrain your movement. So you notice that by holding down the Alt key once I've begun my move, that it's limiting my movement to just a 45-degree angle. So here's 0 degrees, here's 45 degrees, here's 90 degrees, so 45-degree increments by holding down the Alt key once I begin my move. Same thing again for sizing. If I hold down my Alt key once I begin a size, it limits me or constrains me to 25% increments. So here you can see down in my status bar, it's just basically giving me 25% increments. If you hold down the Alt key when you're rotating, it limits or constrains your movement. Oh, sorry, Control Z. So I go ahead and I get over my handle here, my rotation handle. And if I hold down the Alt key while I'm rotating, it limits me to 15-degree increments, et cetera, et cetera. So basically for any of your graphical on-screen edits, shape edits, such as moving, sizing, rotating, slanting, you can constrain or limit your movement by holding down the Alt key. So that's this guy, what I just talked about here. Another thing that you can do with your Control key is to use the mouse wheel. So right now I'm just using my mouse wheel to sort of pan up and down. If I hold down my Control key with the mouse wheel, it allows you to zoom in and to zoom out by scrolling forward and scrolling backwards. This isn't exactly Control or Alt, but if I hold down the Shift key while I use my mouse wheel, it allows you to pan left or to pan right. And if you hold on the Alt key while using your mouse wheel, it's just like the regular mouse wheel. It just pans up and down. So there you go. A little bit about the Control key and the Alt key, and I threw in Shift there for good measure as well. And any questions? It's a pretty simple topic, but again, it's sort of tippy and tricky, just to give you some tips and tricks and hints and things like that. Okay, good. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about is something that we've added, I believe it was in Omega 5.0, which is the ability to actually do nesting on the Composer work surface. And what nesting means is that it allows you to automatically, it uses a nesting algorithm to place shapes next to each other and to try to pack them or compress them as tightly as possible based upon the different settings in the nesting dialog box. So to show how nesting works, I'm just going to go ahead and select this entire graphic here, which is, by the way, just purple with a black outside cut contour. So say you can also do nesting in ArtPath. We added that in Omega 4.0, but in Omega 5.0 we added nesting in Composer as well. So if you do have ArtPath, Bill, you can nest in Composer, or you can actually nest in ArtPath.
Oh yeah, I use nesting all the time,
Excellent. And why do you find that you use nesting? Because it saves your material, or it saves time, or a little bit of both, or?
Both.
Okay.
Saves lots of time, especially in ArtPath.
Okay, fantastic. So to do nesting in Composer, you can go ahead and just select whatever you want to nest, and then you go to the Tools menu, and then we have nesting down here about 2/3 of the way down, and then you just have a couple things that you want to set. Just as, again, another tip or trick, just if you want it to automatically nest to a certain height, for example, if you have a Gerber edge, you might change the height to be 11.8 or 12 inches, or you might change the height to be the width of your plotter. So it might be 13 inches if you have a 13.25 if you have a sprocket plotter, or if you have a friction-fed device, you might make it to be 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever that might be. But if you set the length to be 0, it's going to compress it as tightly as possible in the height orientation and let it basically float to whatever the natural length is by setting that length to be 0. And you can preference that to be on automatically. So turn off, let nesting determine size, set your height to whatever you want it to be, and set your length to be 0, and then go ahead and preference it. Here you have spacing. The lower your spacing value, the more tightly your objects are going to be packed into each other. And probably one of the more important ones that you're going to choose is how you want to nest. Do you want to nest by groups, or do you want to nest by outermost contours? Because I have a sort of a halo outline around my text here. Just to start, I'm going to tell it I want it to nest by outermost contours. And then you also have grid. Again, the lower your grid value, the tighter it's going to pack them in, but the longer it's going to take for your results. You also have angle, and intuitively when I first started using nesting, I was setting my angle value to be like 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, thinking that the more angle permutations I could get, the more efficient of a nest I would get. But then you get the evil permutations. So if you set your angle to be 1 degree, that means that you're going to have, as compared to 90 degrees, you're going to have 90 times more permutations where it's going to try to fit the different pieces together. And that's going to take a lot of time, and that's not necessarily going to give you a very efficient packing because you don't have 4 days to wait for your nesting results to come back. So kind of counterintuitively, I now set my nesting angle to be 90 degrees, and I find that I get very tight results, very nice results typically, and in a very short period of time. So anyway, there's a little bit about angle. Allow shape flipping. I usually keep that off because I don't want my letters to be reversed. And then this is a nice thing. You can place your your nesting statistics on the clipboard. It'll put it over here in the layer notes. And then finally down here you have nesting limits for the duration. How many times do you want it to look at different permutations? I usually set it between 1,000 and 5,000. The faster your computer, the higher you can put that. And a maximum time limit, again, I try to keep it at 1 minute just to sort of show results as quickly as possible. But the default is 5 minutes, but you can set it to be anywhere between 1 and whatever you'd like, and then you can go ahead and preference it. And finally, you have copies over here on the right-hand side. How many copies of the nest would you like? I have it for 10 right now. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And it's done. And you say, well, where's my nest? But you notice over here in the layer tree, whenever we do nesting, we create a new layer and we put the nested results on that new layer. And so it doesn't disturb your original here. This is just remains unchanged. But if I turn off all of my layers, I'm going to do Shift-Alt-2 to turn off all my layers and then just turn on my nesting layer. You notice that I have 10 copies of the word nesting, and they're all grouped together by the outermost contour. And if you look at the height, it's 11.601. My length is 12.801. The height is 11.6 because I set it to 12, and it couldn't fit another one up without passing that 12-inch limit. So, anyway, so there it is showing it with the outermost contours. I'm just going to go ahead and undo and get rid of my nested results here and go back to my nesting layer. And this time I'm going to do basically the same settings, except I'm going to change. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and grab just the original text. Go to Tools and then Nesting. And this time I'm going to tell it that I want it to, actually I'm going to tell it I want it to nest by outermost contours once again, 10 copies. So the same settings, but this time I only have the text selected. So now my outermost contours are my individual letters. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Here's my new layer once again. Let me hit spacebar, go up here, and now you see that I have 10 copies and each letter is individually nested because I told it I didn't select that big halo cut, and I told it I wanted to just nest by that the outermost contour of the text instead. So, and you notice that these are kind of spaced far apart again for the purposes of the webinar. I didn't set my my spacing and my grid to be super low. I just wanted to sort of give you the flavor of what nesting is about in a quick way, just to show the results. Okay?
Hey, this is Bill, Dale. I didn't say where you put in the 10 copies.
Oh, okay, sure, no problem. So let me just undo, and I'll go back to nesting. Let me see. So my nesting layer, make sure I show it. And by the way, I'm using my layers over here as part of the tips and tricks. I can get into more layers as well if anybody has questions about that. So I select my original text. I go into Tools, and then here's Nesting. Over on the right-hand side, you have your number of copies.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Okay, I never saw that before. Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
And the dialog boxes between Composer and ArtPath are slightly different because they were introduced in different versions, and also ArtPath has to take into account your toolpath values. So ArtPath is a little bit different from Composer.
Yeah, I've used this before, but I never saw the copies before.
That's a handy thing. Again, especially even in Composer, if you're making say you're making some labels or decals on some expensive reflective material or something, you can select your label, your decal, go ahead and select the whole thing. Tools, Nesting, how many copies you want? I want 10, and go ahead and do it. And when I take a look at it, see. Got them up there, and then you can go ahead and do your printing, do your cutting, separate them out, and go from there. But you're
awesome. Awesome.
I'm sorry. Okay, good. So there's a little bit about nesting. So I'm just gonna, and again, you notice that my nested results are on their own separate layer, not disturbing anything else about the job. If you don't want the nested results, you can select it in the layer tree and delete it. Or you can go ahead and just undo it if you want to. All right. Okay, then my next topic that I have here is it's a classic. We talk about it just about every time we ever do any sort of a webinar, seminar, tips and tricks, whatever it is, and that's auto text and auto number, and maybe I'll even throw in some barcodes for good measure as well, because once you know auto text and auto number, barcodes are just a very simple add-on. So is anybody currently using auto text and auto number with their Gerber Edge or with their wide format printers, with routing, anything like that?
I've used it a lot.
Okay, good. And do you have any questions about it, or you think you got it down pretty pat? No worries.
No, I use auto number a lot, and it works fantastic.
Okay, good, auto number. So I'll start with auto number, and stop me if you have any questions. So auto number, just in general, what auto text and auto number do, I'll just show it real quick. I'm just going to select this guy here. You notice that I have the word auto number and then #1 or number 1, the number sign 1. That number sign 1 is a denotation to Composer that when I do some repeats, that I want to somehow sequentially number the results. So if I do 10 repeats, and I can set my parameters, I can tell it I want to increment just by 1, so it'll go from 1 to 10. I can tell it I want it to increment by 3, so it'll go 1 to 30, whatever. So let me just show it instead of talk about it. So I select my text, and however you lay out your original job is how it's going to repeat with your sequential numbering. So I have auto number and then the number 1. If I change my number 1 to be black instead of green, it's going to repeat out with auto number being green and my sequential numbering to be black. And I also have my contour cut selected as well. So I go into select it, go to tools, and then repeats merge. And how many repeats would you like? Well, I have 3 in X, 3 in Y, and then go to the auto number tab, and then you can tell it what you want your starting value to be. I'll make it 5. What do you want the increment value to be? I'll make it 2. And you can even do leading characters such as spaces or zeros, things like that. I'll just leave it as none for now and go ahead. And also in the first tab, you have a choice about the direction of which way you want your repeats to go. So if you want it to go from top to bottom, turn this on. If you want it to go from bottom to top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, turn that off. And now we have this new button again in Omega 6 where I can actually see my results, sort of get a preview by clicking on Apply. So you can see that in auto number I told it to start with 5 and my increment value was 2. So let me just zoom out, Shift Z again. I can zoom to my results. And you see we have 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if I show F8, oh, I had to change my text. I had to break it apart, but that's okay. Anyway, you see I have the 5, the 7, the 9, 11, 13, 15, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let me just go ahead and show I can make those all black. Undo. So what I can do, I have auto number, and then in the same, because they're in the same block of text, that actually repeated out as the same color. But if I want to, there's a quick and easy way to deal with that. I can just select this #1 and then cut it to my clipboard. Go to Edit and then Cut. And then I can go to Edit and Paste Back. Paste back. And what it automatically does when you cut a block of text, if you cut a line of text out of a block, it actually turns it into its own separate block. So now I've broken that single block of text into 2. Go to Tools, Repeat, Merge, and I tell it I want to go top to bottom, auto number, 5. This time I'll make my increment value to be 3. Go ahead and apply that, and we can see my results. And if I show it filled, there we go. We have auto number green or teal, and then the numbers in the black. And I do have my cut path around the outside of all of those as well. All right. Auto text is very similar to auto number, except instead of incrementing a number, what it's going to do is it's going to automatically place word from a TXT file, or words or text or whatever it might be. It's going to automatically place it into Composer very quickly and very easily. So you do the same thing if you have any text that you want to be static in your labels or decals or signs. You enter that as text. If you want your bottom number to be a different color, just enter it as a separate block like I just showed before. So if I want my auto text to be bright green, I want my #1 to be blue, make sure there are 2 separate blocks of text. And then again you select it, and the way you set up your original is the way that it's going to repeat out once you go into Tools and Repeats Merge. Tools, repeats, merge. So this time I'll have it go down. I'll do the same 3 and 3, but this time I'm going to click on the text merge tab. And when because you need to actually choose or create a TXT file that has the data in it that you want. So I can go here and I can create a file, or I can select a file that already exists if you want to. Just to show the process, I'm just going to create a file real quick. So I only have one field that I'm merging right now. I just have an ampersand as my denotation in the number 1. So I'm going to put that 1 at the top. And then I'm going to enter in my text, whatever it might be. I'm just entering gobbledygook. But you'll see that my gobbledygook, these could be names, these could be street addresses, these could be serial numbers, these could be product descriptions, these could be whatever you want them to be. They could be shirt colors, shirt sizes, they could be something for an industrial application, safety signs, warning signs, whatever you want it to be. So I've just created my all-important text, and I'm going to do a save or a save as. And I'm going to go to dc:/job c/tips and trick 60, and I'll call it file name text. Very creative name. So there's text.txt. Now that I have my file created, I'm going to go back to Composer. And this time I'm going to select my file. And if I already have text.txt selected, you don't have to create it like I just did. You can go ahead and just choose it if you already have it prepared. Tips 60. All right, there's my file. And then based upon the contents of what's in that TXT file, it shows you the number of records, the lines per record. That's based upon the number 1 that I put at the top. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on OK. And now you see that I have auto text because that was just static text at the top. And then I have my my text that I created at the bottom. And even though I had 13 lines of gobbledygook in my TXT file, because I only had 3 repeats up and 3 repeats across, it only gave me 9 of those 13 lines. So if I wanted to get all of them, I would just have to have at least 13 repeats. Okay. So is anybody else using auto text or auto number? Any questions about it or anything like that?
This is Bill. I use auto number all the time, but I haven't used auto text yet. But auto number is fantastic.
All right, good. And just a couple other things. Auto text and auto number are fully part of the reaction tree. So if I don't like my font, I can go up here to the top and I can change it from Tiffany Medium to be something maybe less ornate slightly. So now we have it as remember I turned it into 2 lines of text. So there we go. And so I can go ahead and change my font, change my static text if I want to. I can't change my ampersand 1 or my pound 1 because those are required for the denotation for creating auto text and auto number. But just real quick. And if you want to, you can also go in here and so here's my other text, and you notice that it's maybe sort of infringing on the outside of my border. You can also go ahead and you can do a force length percentage. So if I want to make this to be 80%, it's going to go ahead and it's going to reduce the length of all of my auto text by changing that to 80%. So, and another thing that's kind of neat, if you want a prefix or a suffix build, specifically for auto text, but you can do it for auto number as well. I'm sorry, specifically for auto number. If I go into here into the pound 1 field and say I want to have a prefix on all of these, BILL, BETZ. So now it's going to be Bill and then my incremented number and then bet after each one of those. So you can see you have Bill 11, Bill 5, 8, 11, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just by including a prefix and a suffix in your text that surrounds the pound 1 or the ampersand 1, you can include that in your auto text and auto number as well.
That is really slick.
All right.
Dale, is there a way to do 2 lines of numbers?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. So let me go. I'm just going to go over here into a fresh spot. So I'm going to do text on the work surface, or you can do regular text in the dialog box. You can do pound 1, and then I'm going to go ahead and do pound 2. So now I'm going to get auto number allows for incrementing two different numbers in two different manners. So again, design the rest of your decal around the outside of it again. So I'll just put a little rectangle around there, make the rectangle whatever. And then I'll make my pound 1 and my pound 2 to be black. And also you have to pay attention to your wireframes, the green or the black or whatever, because again, the way that you set up the original, I just turned my cuts off. So now it's just going to print these, and it's just going to cut this outside box. And I want to make sure I do my to fronts and to back. So I'm doing Shift Page Up. There we go. All right, so I have pound 1, pound 2. You go into Tools and then Repeats Merge. Tools, Repeats Merge. 3 and 3, and now go over here to auto number. Here you have auto number 1. Starting value, I'll make it 1. My increment value, I'll make 1. For auto number 2, I'll have my starting value be 11, and I'll have my increment value be 11. And it shows you down at the bottom what the final number is. And go ahead and OK. And there you go. Was that you, Mike, asking about that?
No, it was somebody else.
No, that was me, Doug Buster.
Oh, how are you?
Yeah, Dave, can you do the same? I guess it would also apply to the auto text as well.
For auto text, it's actually a little bit more flexible with auto number. You really you have pound 1 and pound 2, and that's kind of the limit of it. For auto text, remember before, let's go here. I'm just going to go ahead and go to text merge or auto text, and I'm going to edit my file. Remember before in my gobbledygook file, I just put a number 1 at the top, and then I put in just whatever my data is. If you want to, I could go ahead and I can make this to be 2, or I can make it to be 3, or I can make it to be 5, whatever you want to be. And then what I have to do is just stack the data. So let's say that it's, I'll do the number 2, and I'll have my gobbledygook, and then I'll have a color. So I'll have, you know, this nonsensical text, and then I'll put a color after it. So I have the number 2 in there, which is field 1, which is gobbledygook, and field 2 is a color. So here's green. So I have gobbledygook, and then I'm going to do red. So it's going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to show you how this all comes together. And then I'll do blue. And then I have my gobbledygook, and I'll do purple. I'm going to run out of colors. That's a bad thing. Yellow. And hopefully this makes sense, and then et cetera. So I'll start again with repeating my colors because I've run out of colors. Help me with some colors. Chartreuse, T-R-E-U-S-E. Oh, very nice. I spelled it wrong. Black. White. Okay, so I have a 2 at the top, which is my field 1 is gobbledygook. My field 2 is a color. Gobbledygook, color, gobbledygook, color. And they do have to be in order to basically repeat out properly. So I'm just going to add white for the rest of them. There we go. And I'll save that. So now I just edited my file. So if I go ahead and I generate my repeats again, because I only have ampersand 1 in here, it's still only going to use, I think it's only going to, no, it's actually going to continue through the whole thing. So I'm going to set this up a little bit differently. I'm going to do Shift-T. I'm going to do ampersand, ampersand 1, and then I'll do ampersand 2. So ampersand 1 is gobbledygook, ampersand 2 is color. I'll select that, and I'll put my little border around the outside, and the way you set up your original template is the way that it's going to repeat out. So if I don't want any cuts or prints on there or whatever. So these are red, meaning they're going to print only. This is black, meaning it's going to cut only. I have ampersand 1 and ampersand 2. Oh. Go into Tools, Repeats Merge, and again, I have 3 and 3. And if I go into Text Merge, I'm going to select my file. And my file is text.txt if I want to take a look at it. So I have 2, gobbledygook, color. I have ampersand 1, ampersand 2. That corresponds to this number 2 that I put at the top here, gobbledygook and color. Choose my file, open. And now when I go ahead and I repeat it out, okay, you see that I have my gobbledygook and my color, gobbledygook, color, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So with auto text, you can make that topmost number to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11. You can make it 75 if you want, although I've never frankly gone quite that high. And then you just have to put your data in the particular order. So if in this case it's just nonsensical text, or as I've been calling it, gobbledygook, my second line is a color. And then as I go down through the TXT file, it's just the next field of data. So it's a different gobbledygook and a different color, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
And so again, auto text is really very flexible. It's just a matter of putting that number up at the top and then making sure that you structure your text properly to make sure that it sees it in the proper order.
Hey Dale, this is Bill. This is Bill, Dale. I have a question in the text dialog box.
Okay, sure.
Is there any way to make it larger or zoom in?
This box itself?
Yeah.
You can increase your screen resolution, but other than that, not that I know of, but I will take a note for that.
Okay.
Make text dialog box bigger.
Yeah, where it fills the whole screen.
Okay. Sure. Makes perfect sense.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, good. So that was a good one. That was a little bit about auto text and auto number. Does anybody else have any other questions about anything? I can, like I said, I can go off of my list of topics over here, but I'll be happy to continue. All right, I will continue. Okay, the next topic are some of my favorite accelerator keys, and I've been talking about them sort of as we've been going, about some of them as we've been going along, but this is by no means a comprehensive list. There is a list of all of the Composer and Plot accelerators. If you go look on your DVD, there's a documentation button, and there's something in there about Omega accelerator keys, and it shows you every conceivable accelerator key. The other thing too is that you can see accelerators in the menus and as you fly over certain tools. So as I fly over the selection tool, you notice it says selection and then P. P means that's the accelerator. Color selection, Shift P. And then we have enter edit text is T. And if you fly this out and pull it off, if you fly over these various tools, you can see text on the work surface, Shift T, small text, Shift S, etc. So if you don't want to look in a little teeny tiny Excel spreadsheet, you can just kind of fly over the tools here in Composer. But some of my favorites, one of them I've already talked about, is you can select something. So I'm going to press P for pointer, and then I'm going to select this line of text down here, and I'm doing Shift Z. Shift Z, so zoom to selected, Z for zoom, Shift, zoom to selected. And it's really a nice way to navigate around the Composer screen very quickly just based upon whatever is selected. So another one, which is sort of a combination of an accelerator key and a feature, and I'm going to Shift Z again, is interactive on-screen outline. So there's an accelerator key for outline, which is Alt and the number 1, and that brings up the outline dialog box, and you can go ahead and do your outline. But sometimes, in outline we've now added the apply button, so you can see interactively, what your results are a little bit better than before, certainly. So there's my apply button, but wouldn't it be nice if there was a way that you could actually see your outline on the screen, and there actually is. So before I said it was Alt plus 1 to get to outline. If you do Alt plus Shift plus the number 1, it gives you a new toolbar, which is this toolbar up here. Let me just drag it down. And what you do with this crosshair, you just simply click and drag up or down or left or right, and it gives you an outline right on the Composer work surface. So sometimes it's nice just to be able to see it right here on the work surface. So you let it go, and then you see that you have your outline of 0.360 inches. I never would have guessed that outline value was 0.360. So, and then once you have your outline created, you can go back to your regular pointer and just double click, and it brings up your regular outline dialog box, so you can edit and apply and use the traditional way of using outline. So Alt Shift 1, interactive on-screen outline. Select it, turn it off. There you go. So T is your text dialog box, so just go press the letter T and then click. It brings up the text dialog box. Shift plus T, which is what I'm clicking right now. Shift plus T is text on the work surface, TOWS. For some reason, I seem to be stuck with Tiffany today. I must have been using it before. Shift plus S. S is for small text. Does everybody know what small text is? Small text is, you can use it with your Gerber Edge or you can use it in general. It basically gives you access in Composer to TrueType fonts and OpenType fonts right in Composer. And the added benefit of using it with your Gerber Edge is that it gives you nice, crisp, small text at 10 points, 12 points, 8 points, 6 points. It gives you a nicer edge quality than if you just use small vector text. So Shift S, small text. Shift Z, zoom to selected. I already talked about it. By the way, I'm using my mouse wheel and I'm scrolling down to scroll through these. Space bar is zoom to all. I use that one constantly. Space bar just zooms to everything that's in Composer that's not hidden. So if I were to go over here and show all my layers, which there's an accelerator for that as well, and then I hit space bar, it zooms me to everything that's in Composer. If I hide all of my layers, and I can go back to just this one particular layer and then hit spacebar. Another one that I use a lot, especially if I'm trying to just send something to a vinyl cutter, is Control 1 and Control 2. So right now you notice that these all have a green fill to them. And if I just want to cut this on a vinyl cutter, I want to clear all of my strokes and all of my fills. And there's a nice, quick, easy way to do that. I just do F2 to select all. Control 1 will clear all of your fills, and Control 2 will clear all of your strokes. And now if I view this, you notice that the wireframe is black, meaning that there are no fills, no strokes. Shift F11 is output all. Shift F12 will output selected from Composer to plot. We have Alt 1 through Alt 5 for various tools, from the Tools menu. So if I want to do outline, it's Alt 1. If I want to do distortion, Alt 2. Alt 3 is warp. Alt 4 is shadow. And Alt 5 is effects. So that's what these are. Alt 1
or you can click right?
Or you can right-click as well. Yep, absolutely. That oftentimes there's more than one way to get to an option or get to a function. P is pointer, Shift P color pointer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I will send you this this PLT file so you can actually review it if you want to as well. Okay. So there's accelerators a little bit. Any questions about accelerator keys? Thank you for the right-click insight. Spectratone and Color ID. For those of you who are using a Gerber Edge, we have this color, we call it a color multiplication capability called Gerber Color Spectratone. For those of you with an Edge, are you using Spectratone, familiar with Spectratone? Do you have any questions about Spectratone?
I've used it about 3 or 4 times, and it works great. I printed out a Spectratone chart. It took quite a while, but man, it's great when you need an odd color. Okay, and what Bill has done, he's basically taken all the foils that he has, and there's a way to generate a file where it automatically overprints all of your different foils on top of each other, so you can actually have an actual visual hard copy of all of your available Spectratone colors. We also have another tool which is called Color ID. And what Color ID is a nice way to cross-reference colors. So probably the most obvious one is to be able to cross-reference from Pantone to spot colors, or from Pantone to a vinyl color, or from Pantone to another Pantone color, whatever it might be. And you can do this through the use of our program called Color ID. Sometimes joking around I call it Color ID, but it's just Color ID. So I call it COLOR, and there's Gerber Color ID. Go ahead and I click on it. And we used to use a spectrophotometer that you could measure with Color ID, but we no longer offer that, so that's just what that initial message was. So with Color ID, you have a source color, and then you have a target color. So what do I want to match from, and what do I want to match to? So usually in a lot of cases for my source, I'll go down here and I'll go down to the P's, and Gerber is an actual licensee of Pantone, so we are valid users of the Pantone solid-coded libraries. And then what Pantone color do I want to try to approximate? So let's say I want to try to do Pantone, I don't know, I'm picking a random color, 456. So go Pantone 456, I hit my down arrow, and that's a really gross color. Let me try 789 instead. Sort of a light yellow. So
I want to match from Pantone. Oh, that was not actually a color, so I'll go back to 456. All right, so it's sort of a grassy green. It's what it sort of looks like, brownish green color on my screen here. And then how do you want to try to approximate this Pantone 456? You drop down your matching target palette, and you have a whole bunch of options, a whole bunch of different palettes. Usually I'll go find my Gerber Color foils, or I'll go find Spectratone, Gerber Color Spectratone. And there's a way that you can reduce the number of your palettes that you want to. So, it's actually G, Gerber Spectratone. I apologize. Gerber Spectratone. There it is. So it's saying using Spectratone. So for Pantone 456 is what I'm trying to match to or approximate. And what am I trying to match it with? Gerber Spectratone. It's saying that putting lemon yellow on top of gold is going to give you this particular color here, and the delta E, which is an indication of how close the match is. The closer to 0, the more perfect the match. It's a delta E of 3.5, which is actually not bad in the world of color matching and color approximation. And if you don't happen to have lemon yellow or gold, you can set your number of matches between 10 or 20 different matches based upon whatever your inventory is. Or you can plug your inventory of foils into Color ID, and it will only show you colors that you have on your shelf. So that's just a quick summary of Color ID, but very powerful way to cross-reference colors. I can also go from Spectratone to Pantone. So if a customer wants to know, say you printed them a sign using a particular spot color, and they say, well, I'd like to approximate this on my business card with a Pantone color. You can go up here and choose Gerber spot colors, and then you can choose Pantone as the target and just reverse those. And so it's useful both for producing with your Gerber Edge production system as well as going external to your Edge as well. Gerber Color ID. All right. Any questions? Good. Okay, so I am showing 11 a.m. This webinar was scheduled to go from 10 to 11. And I obviously have more topics, and I'll probably do maybe one or two more. But if anybody has to go, I certainly would like to thank you for coming, and I will send a follow-up email with the PowerPoint as well as with the PLT file, or at least a link to both of those, as well as a recording of this webinar so you can review any of the information at your leisure. So if anybody has to go, thank you very much. Otherwise, I'll probably just cover maybe 2 or 3 more topics, and then maybe wrap it up at about 11:05. If that's okay.
It was great, just great. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. All right, so my next one that I have here is images, and what are some of the different things you can do with images. The first thing that I like to talk about, I don't know if you've ever gotten the message about cannot find a particular JPEG file or TIFF file or whatever it is. It's because by default in Composer, we used to link images. So you would have your PLT file where you would be doing your designing with the text and graphics and images, and then you would go import or place an image, and the image would not be stored in the PLT file for the purposes of output. It would actually just be linked to that image, and you would still have to have that image on your hard drive to actually output it. Well, in Omega 4.0, we made it, Omega 2.5, we made it so you could actually embed an image, so your PLT file and your image file are forever together, and you could output on any system anywhere. You don't have to worry about maintaining that image file on your hard drive. So to embed an image, once you place it in Composer, it's really very simple. All you need to do really is just, there we go, select your image, and I'm holding down the Control key just to select my image, and you go into the Fill dialog box. You can do that by pressing the number 1 on the keyboard once you have an image selected, or you can click on this picture frame over here, and it brings up your image fill dialog box, and just go down here and click on Embedded, and then that image will forever be embedded in there. So go ahead and click on OK, and now you don't have to worry about losing the image if you ever want to output on a different system or send the file to somewhere else or whatever it might be. So that's embedding images. You can set that as a preference by going into the Fill dialog box, clicking on Embedded, and then clicking on Preferences. So in this case, it's already embedded. That's why it's grayed out. You cannot unembed an image once it's embedded except by deleting it and then placing it again. But if you want to preference it, click on Embedded, Preferences, off you go. Another thing while I'm in here that you can do with images, typically you might be outputting as a CMYK or a process color job to a Gerber Edge or what have you. For special effects, you can also click on a spot color. So you see this Google Doodle over here. I'm going to say I want this to be a black spot color, and what it basically does, it gives you just a monochrome version in whatever spot color that you happen to have. So right now I just selected black. I could go ahead and I can make this to be blue or red or green or whatever it might want to be. So I'll make this Google Doodle to be apple green, and when I go to output this, it's only going to ask for apple green. It's not going to ask for CMYK. So it's nice for special effects, or it also can be, if you're trying to save color with a soft shadow or what have you, you can just use a single spot color instead of mixing CMYK. On-screen digitize. This is a way to, we have the ability to do raster to vector and generate decal cut and posterize image and things like that. But sometimes you just want to be very specific in terms of what you want to isolate out of an image, and you might want to put a mask or a clipping path around that. And we have a whole series of tools here in Composer, which starts with your line tool over here in the main toolbox. And then you can go ahead and you can just isolate literally by just digitizing a line around the outside of whatever the image might be. So I just go ahead and I told it to turn my curve on, and I now have a curve coming up to this point. I'm turning my curve off, turning my curve on again, and I'm going down here around the outside edge. And this, looks like a very manual process, and it is. But in some cases, it's very much it's quicker and easier to go through a manual process like this. So far I've spent a grand total of 25 seconds on this. You can mess around with it trying to use more automated tools, but you might find that you might spend 15 minutes or 20 minutes trying to use an automated method as opposed to just using on-screen digitize. So I'm just going to hide my image here for a moment, and now you see I have that Dom Perignon shield, and now I can select this. Select my shield, select my background image, and I can use this as a clipping path. So I go into the Shape menu, Make Clipping Path, and now when I press F8, the rest of that image is gone. I just have my Dom Perignon shield. And if I want to tweak it a little bit, I still have my Detail Edit tools. I can tweak it in. So just to be extreme, you can see that I over-tweaked it. But the clipping path still works even once I detail edit that on-screen digitized path. So that's kind of cool. I use on-screen digitizing on a very regular basis, very useful. I also just showed you clipping path in terms of using my on-screen digitized stuff. If I want to, I can go ahead, I'll release that clipping path, go to the Shape menu and release clipping path. And instead of using that shield that I just digitized, I'm going to bring this word luxury up here, Dom Perignon, of course, the pinnacle of luxury. So I have the text, my vector is going to do the clipping. Select my vector, it's to front and it's grouped, and then I select the image, and then again I go to the Shape menu, Make Clipping Path, and now I only have my image inside of those particular letters. And this actually is behaving like text. So I can put this clipping path on top of other things over here, and you notice that I can see the other text through the word luxury with my Dom Perignon clipped or masked. So it's a nice way to, sometimes you have that extra outside. So for example, for this Google Doodle, if I don't want this big white background rectangle, I can use a clipping path to get rid of it or to just get a nice tight contour around it. So I can go select my Google Doodle tools, and I can do Generate Decal Cut. Generate Decal. I usually use the accelerator key, so I have to actually find it. It's G, Generate Decal Cut. And over here I have Decal Cut. It shows me my Google Doodle. And over here, Apply Generated Objects as a clipping path. So it's going to automatically give me my decal cut. It's going to automatically apply a clipping path and get rid of that background rectangle, so I can now have my Google Doodle over here on top of my other stuff. And in terms of what that looks like, I'll do my F8 and then F9. You can see that I have my clipping path here around the outside. Pretty good, nice and easy. F8 shows my clipping path. Okay. All right. So let's see. The one last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to undo here a couple times just to get back to my Dom Perignon. sometimes you have an image and you bring it into Composer, and you really wish that you could get your colors to be a little bit brighter. I'm just going to show one thing real quick to change your source profile. So I'm going to do Shift-Z and just zoom to my Dom Perignon, go into my image fill dialog box, and over here you have Source Image Color Profile. And what this is part of the Omega Color Management System. We have the full capability of source profiles and images, the ability of assigning output profiles if you're going to an Edge or going to a wide format inkjet. We have the ability to do soft proofing on the screen, etc., or proofing for a desktop paper printer if you want, whatever. We have full color management capabilities, but the one thing that I want to show here is that by changing my source profile for my image, I can sometimes get nice brighter colors or get a little bit more better fidelity in my colors. So I'm going to click on OK, and I don't know how it's going to translate over the webinar screens, but you notice that it got actually a little bit yellow when I changed my source profile. I'm going to undo it and then redo it. And you notice that just by changing my source profile, I got a little bit deeper, richer colors in terms of the yellows and things like that. So I just want to just sort of a guideline that if you're ever importing images into Composer and you're not sure where they came from, you either want to try to use, maybe just as a rule of thumb, a guideline, use Adobe RGB, or perhaps use sRGB. sRGB was designed to be sort of a catch-all source profile if you're not sure where something came from, especially for images, digital camera pictures, things like that. So now I'm switching from Adobe RGB to sRGB. Let's see if we see, it kind of changed it back to the way it was before. So anyway, change your source profile and you might get a little bit brighter colors or a little bit better fidelity in your colors. So. All right, 11:09 by the time we got rolling. I would say it was probably around 10:10. So I'd just like to thank everybody. And again, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to stay on the line and answer any questions. But otherwise, I hope you have a great day, great afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your summer week. And have a good Labor Day.
Just want to say thanks. It was very, very informative.
Okay, well, thank you very much for attending. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a whole lot, man.
And I'll send my follow-up emails and recording of the webinar, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, this is Mike. Thank you. Really good.
Hi, Mike. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.